Paths are an inevitability when it comes to building on your island. Even small islands and small builds can benefit greatly from having paths leading to different areas or whatever. Paths are an amazing part of this game, but they can be kind of basic and dumb and lame, like this one right here, which is just a straight line of dirt, or this one right here, which is just a straight line of sand. However, in this video, I'm going to go over a lot of different tips and tricks and things that can help you improve your paths here in Ponytown. Starting, of course, with mixing. All you have to do is take some sand and some dirt and just mix them randomly, and suddenly your path looks much more interesting. Of course, you could do probably a better job than I did here, but this is just a quick thing I threw together as an example. Next, you can give it some shape. All you have to do is have it wind and twist and take random paths and stuff like that. Now, in real life, paths, the most desirable path at least, usually is a straight line. However, these are not always the most beautiful looking ones, and so consider adding some twists and turns to your paths, because I promise you, it'll probably look much better than just a straight road or a straight line. That being said, most of the paths you're going to see in this video are straight lines. However, they are very adaptable and easy to turn into these curves and stuff, as you can see in this one right here. So let's move on to the next one, which is, again, mixing some stones. Mix a bunch of different stones together and create some wild shapes with those, and boom, you got yourself a nice, interesting path. Now, this next one is actually one that I absolutely love. I love doing this next one. It is one of my favorite things to do whenever I'm making like a garden bed or a path or something to that effect, and that is using the ingots. The thin ingot is actually really useful for making paths or roads, especially if you're trying to do something a little bit more industrial. Now, the only problem with this is if you are going to use some dirt in between, you do need to keep in mind that some dirt might peek through, and so you can easily fix that by throwing in some grass or something to that effect. You can even throw in some sand towards the end, whatever. Another great thing about this too is that these are rotatable, so if you want to encase this, all you have to do is rotate it, and suddenly you can get yourself a box of some kind. And just like that, you can have the path start maybe over here, you come this way, and the path ends with the iron ingots blocking your way. This is really cool, especially since you can just walk right over it. That is one of the best things about this path system here. Now, this next one is also another one that I'm a huge fan of, and that is going full nature. Look at this path right here. This is beautiful. If this was much longer, add some curves and stuff like that, it would be incredible, because you have these rocks up here. It's kind of, I don't know, it gives some really good vibe here. It's very natural. It's kind of a natural looking path, so if you wanted something that looks a bit more natural, this is definitely a system for you. Throw in some rocks, mix them with some bushes. What I did here is actually, these are the potted ones. I changed the color to green, and I hid it behind the rocks so that you couldn't tell that there is just potted bush there. Instead, it looks like it's a large bush or something like that. Mix in some plants and stuff like that. I'm not too big of a fan of the random leaves that I've put in the middle of the path, but honestly, this is just a really good path that you should probably be introducing if you're going to be doing maybe a park, or you're going to do some kind of overgrown place or something like that. Have it look like this. Put some rocks in places and stuff like that. Now, the next tip when it comes to building this one is that you got to be a little bit careful, because sometimes with the way clipping and stuff like that works, with the way the rocks work, it can be very obvious that you're crossing rocks. So like this, you can tell it's crossing over that one because the grass goes underneath it and stuff like that. So you got to be really careful when you're placing stuff like that. But otherwise, this is super useful, and I love this path. This is one of my favorite paths in this video. Next up, you can place a bunch of different log slices. All you have to do is get the large ones and the small ones here, and just kind of interchange them. Make like a grid pattern or like a crisscross, and have them mixed together like this and stuff like that, and boom, you have yourself a path. Now, of course, you can mix this with some plants, some bushes, maybe some torches or some candles or whatever else. You can mix it with a bunch of other items on the edges of the path or something like that, but this is just a basic path that you can introduce in your builds right now. It wouldn't even take you that many items. I think there's only about 50 or 30 items here. I actually don't know how many items of these slices I've placed, but there's not that many of these. And that is another thing too. If you're not a supporter, if your limit is 600, then you're gonna have to be a little bit careful with how big you make some of these paths, because if the paths are too big, you're gonna be using a large number of items and go over budget, so to speak. But with that in mind, let's take a look at this one right here, which doubles as a bridge, which honestly, let's be real, bridges are basically paths. This is a super simple, super easy one. Literally, it's just 2 of these long fences here, and then a couple of lanterns on this side, lantern posts on this side, and a couple lantern posts on this side with some wood in the middle. You guys probably know this from other videos. I love a good bridge. This right here is a very basic bridge. It's good enough to serve its purpose. In my opinion, something as simple as this looks amazing. But again, it's easy enough to improve on this. You can add some posts, other posts here. You can add some bushes and plants and stuff like that. You could add some stuff in the water and everything like that to make it more bridge-like and everything like that. But this is just a very basic bridge, which kind of is the point of a path. Like some paths are bridges. Some of the paths you've seen already could double as bridges. Next up, we have this right here. I've done this a couple of times. You may have seen it in some of my builds or some of my videos before in the past, but this is literally just some random logs, or I guess it's technically called like a wood or something like that. But I've just rotated them so that the dark side is facing us, and then I just lined them up, and then I did the same on this side, and then because there's a couple of spots like this right here where it's kind of bare, again, I just took some weeds or some grass or whatever and hid those, because honestly, I think it makes it look a little bit better, because if it was just the logs, I don't think it would look as good. Now, one thing to note about this path is that these do have collision, so if you're trying to use this as a path for something and you want to be able to come through here or come through here or something like that, you will just have to straight up have this be open, because otherwise you're not going to be able to cross it unless you're flying or something like that. So this is a good simple path. Again, this one wouldn't take too many items. Again though, if you're going to make a really long path, it might take you more items and stuff like that, but this is just basic here. This also makes a good garden bed or a good flower bed or something to that effect as well. Additionally, these can be rotated diagonally, so if you wanted your paths to go like this, you could very easily have them rotate that way. You could have them rotate this way, etc. It is really easy to have them rotate in different weird, wacky directions and stuff like that. You could even, if I get my hammer here and just rotate this enough times, you could even have it be completely closed off, just like that. So you could even have your path abruptly end right here, just like so, and it's like, oh, that's the end of the path. And again, another simple, easy, quick thing you can throw together to make the path even better. Another simple path is something like this. This could also double as a bridge or something to that effect, but you just have a basic stone wall on each side. Again, some lantern posts on each side, and then maybe some vines going across or something like that. But even without these vines, even if I got rid of these vines, this right here is also a pretty serviceable bridge or path that you could use in your builds. Even if I removed these, this still serves as a pretty decent enough path for you in your builds, because your path doesn't have to be super extravagant. It doesn't have to have all of this extra detail. Obviously, adding more detail and stuff like that can be helpful, but there is such a thing as too much detail. So if you add too much to your path, it might end up looking a little bit overwhelming or too ugly or something like that. That's why the nature build is one of my favorites, because even though it can be kind of overwhelming, there's still something so simple about it. It's just a bunch of nature just all over the place, and there's something, I don't know, something so beautiful about that. Next up, we have this right here. This would be good for a city, or if you have some kind of indoor area or something like that. All you would need is these planters with the bushes inside of them, and already, even without these posts on the corners, this already looks really good. Honestly, like, you could even get rid of these and just have this be carpet or something like that. And boom, you have an indoor path, if that makes sense. Because some paths indoors do exist, I guess, in a way. I guess those would be called hallways, but this would be a good hallway or whatever else. But if you're gonna have it be outside, I would recommend maybe having some lanterns in the corners or something like that. Just something like that. You could even throw in some more detail here on the edges to kind of cover that up a little bit more and stuff like that. But this is another really basic one that you can introduce. Again, though, you have to be careful with the collision, because if you wanted players to be able to go this way, for example, you would have to have that open up, and having these be separated can sometimes be a little bit awkward looking in my opinion, but that's just my own personal opinion. Next up, we have another super simple one. This only uses like 10 different items. I mean, of course, it would increase the longer you made the path, but this right here is literally just these small log slices with some firefly lanterns on them. You could replace this with candles, whatever you wanted to, and then I interchanged them with some lilies on top of the same log slices. So you have firefly lantern, flower, firefly lantern, flower, etc, 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 all the way going over. And again, this one works really well with curves and everything else like that. You can improve this more by having maybe a little bit of some flowers around the ground or something like that, maybe adding some bushes or other plants and stuff like that around it as well. This one is super modifiable to make it even better. This one makes a good dock in a way. All you have to do is take these long log seat bench things and then just have them be every other one. So you have one right here, then one right here, then one right here, then one here, then one here, etc, etc. You're making like a grid basically with them. In between each of the grids, you have these shorter ones that sit in between. Make sure they don't exactly line up. Make sure they don't exactly touch each other, because if they're exactly touching each other, then you won't be able to see the water underneath. And I think being able to see the water underneath is the thing that makes this amazing. Another thing to note too is if you are going to have this be something that's over water, you do need to be careful, because if you make it too wide or too long, the items are going to start bobbing in the water and it's just not going to look super great. So you're going to have to be careful a little bit about how you do some of that stuff. If you are going to have this be wider or something like that, I would recommend just using the blue carpet instead of the water, because it would still give you kind of the same effect. People would be able to understand that, hey, there's supposed to be water underneath this, but it would still look decent. Next up, we have this one right here. Now, this is an item limit killer. This is just a bunch of round ingots all next to each other in random corners and everything else like that. I just randomly place them between each other and everything like that, and you get this kind of cobblestone path. Honestly, we need some kind of cobblestone path in the game, honestly. I think that should be one of the floor tiles, but for now, if you want any kind of cobblestone-esque thing, you're gonna need to do something basically like this. Now, you could probably get away with using some of the thicker ingots and stuff like that, but I think the round ones look especially good. Now, this may not look super great from like super zoomed in or anything like that, because it's just such a short path, but if you had a super long path just filled with these, this would look pretty decent, especially if you added some edges here for I don't know, like grass or dirt or something like that. I think you could have something very beautiful on your hands, and it could be good for a city or some other thing like that. Next up and last up is this super simple one. This one is also one of my favorites. I absolutely love this. This is literally just random wooden posts just lined up. You have one that's slightly lower, then one that's slightly up, then one slightly lower, then one slightly up, and you just do that all the way for your entire path. And then on the opposite side, you do the exact same thing. At random points in your path, you can change some of the small wooden posts to be these long wooden posts, maybe with the little rope thing on them or something like that, or you can have them be this one right here, again, that are even longer than those or something like that. You could then even tie some ropes in between here or something like that, maybe some banners. There's so much you could do with this one. This one is super modifiable, and this also could make maybe a good bridge. As you can see, this could also make a pretty decent bridge. Now, you'd probably need to modify this slightly, because as you can see, these are already going in the water, but this would be very easy to fix, because all you'd have to do is raise this side up and then raise this side up. Obviously, that's going to take too long for me to do in this video right now, but you can see how this would obviously make a really decent bridge. This could also make really good walls and stuff like that. I think I've seen people do that before in the past, where they've used these as walls. Rather than being the short ones, though, they use the tall ones, and to change the color of them to be darker or white or something like that. And that's something else you can do here too. You can replace some of these to be darker, white, etc. There's so many different colors you can use here, which I think makes this method even more customizable than you might think. But anyway, those are a handful of different paths that you can make here in Ponytown. Do you have any of your own tips? Are there any kind of special paths that you typically make here in Ponytown? Let me know in the comments below, and I hope you found something useful out of this. If you did, or if you didn't and just enjoyed what you watched here anyway, please do consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and doing all of those wonderful things like that, because when you do wonderful things like that, not only do you get access to wonderful content such as this, but you also get to become wonderful yourself, and I think we all want that. So do those wonderful things, and until next time, stay wonderful.